Jake here for American Trucks, and today I'm taking a look at the Bilstein B8 5100 series height adjustable front shock fitting 2014 to 2018 Silverado and Sierra 1500s. Upgrading your shocks is an excellent way to improve the ride and handling characteristics of your truck, but these B8 5100s take things a step further. They're a super high quality shock absorber that give you not just an improvement in the overall driving experience, but they also function as a leveling kit, which makes them pretty unique in the market. I try not to mince words when it comes to suspension modifications, and when it comes to getting some kind of lift or level on your truck, yes, we all want the look, but it should ride and handle well too. And nobody does ride and handling better than Bilstein. I've had Bilsteins on several of my own vehicles, including a set of these B8 5100s, and they never fail to impress. Now these in particular have some really cool features, and the biggest of that is that you can adjust the physical height of where the spring perch sits, effectively giving you either a factory ride height or up to a 1.85 inch level. Now running this shock in its highest setting also means that you can get larger wheels and tires on your truck. In this case, you can get some seriously beefy 31s on there without issue. Most 32s will also fit, but as you get into higher offsets or bigger 32s, you may need to do some minor trimming or you might encounter issues with rubbing. So to ensure that you don't run into issues, we recommend sticking with 31s for this setup. Keep in mind too, if you run this shock at a lower height, you may also encounter some rubbing issues, so size accordingly. So these grooves here on the body of the shock allow the adjustment with this snap ring, so you can have these set at totally stock level by setting them here at the bottom like we have right now, or crank it up a bit more than a 1.5 inch level by setting them at this top groove here. And then just set your spring perch right on top of the snap ring and you're set to go. It's a super easy way to level out your truck, and you don't need anything additional, no blocks or anything like that. Now, if you want to set it back to stock at some point too, it's also a pretty simple process. And having that adjustability is really cool, but you've got to get some really solid damping to match, otherwise the ride is going to be severely compromised. But of course, Bilstein has you covered here. The B8 5100s feature digressive valving technology, which allows the shocks to instantly react to impacts and varying road surfaces. Inside of the shock body, you've got self-adjusting deflective disc valves, and those allow for more variability in rebound, compression, and in travel, so all of the important things that you want out of a shock. And it just adds up to more control out on the street or trail. And despite these being non-adjustable monotube shocks without remote reservoirs, the damping here is excellent, and you can definitely feel the difference in body control versus stock. Now these aren't going to ruin the ride by any means. In fact, it stays pretty much the same, just a little bit more firm and again, more controlled. It's a shock that doesn't really compromise in any way at all, and that's the thing I like most about it. Construction, as is the usual with Bilstein's offerings, is also excellent. You get a 46mm diameter shock body that is zinc plated for durability and good looks. Inside, you've got a chromed and hardened piston rod with that self-adjusting disc valve we were discussing a moment ago. Plus, you get a new OEM grade bushing down here at the bottom mounting point and new hardware too, giving you everything you need to replace your shock. Bilstein also backs their stuff up with a lifetime warranty against defects, and I can tell you from experience, they're very good about honoring that. Just make sure you save your receipt. Pricing will come in at about $200 per shock, and as you've no doubt noticed by now, I've only got one shock up here on the table because these are sold separately. So make sure you make that quantity too when you go to buy them. And that $200 price point does put these in about the middle of the range price-wise, and I think that seems about right. Since you aren't getting things like adjustable damping or those remote reservoirs, you are saving a bit on cost. But these are still going to provide excellent damping control and the ability to level out your truck too. So if you're shopping for shocks and aren't looking to lift your truck to the sky, you really cannot go wrong with these. Now there is also a matching set of rear shocks in the same series available, and I would highly recommend doing them all together. Bilstein engineers their stuff to work cohesively all together, and it will make a big improvement on how your truck drives, especially if you do both front and rear. Installation gets a 2 out of 3 on our difficulty meter, and each shock should take you about 2 hours to replace. Now you will need a spring compressor to accomplish this job, as you are going to need to transfer over your stock spring, your top hat, and your perch for the spring as well. Hence that 2 out of 3. Now working with a spring compressor can be a bit finicky, but if you've got the right tools and you take your time, this is definitely something you can do at home. And to show you exactly what's involved, let's head on over to the install bay now.
Tools required for this install include a couple different size impact guns, a ratchet, a hammer, 6, 15, and 17mm wrenches, a pair of snap ring or lock ring pliers, vice grips, 15 and 17 millimeter swivel sockets, a 10 and 21 millimeter socket, a 7/32 Allen wrench with a little bit cut off, an 18 millimeter ratcheting wrench, a pry bar, and a spring compressor. What's up guys? Today we're installing a set of front shocks on our Silverado. First we're going to watch a quick uninstall video showing you how to remove your factory struts, and then I'll meet you right back here for the install.
Step number one in our long installation process here is actually to remove our factory skid plate. We've got our truck up in the air on our lift, but if you're working on the ground, make sure you're supporting the entire truck on the frame rails using jack stands. So we've got it up in the air here. We're going to remove the two 15 millimeter bolts up top. Then we're going to remove the rest of the bolts holding the skid plate on underneath our front diff. The next step here, we're going to grab a 21 millimeter deep socket and remove the nut holding on our factory tie rod end. Now we're not going to fully remove the nut just yet. I'm going to loosen it up so it's on the last thread here, and then we're going to need to take a hammer and just knock this loose. We're going to knock that spindle loose from the tie rod end. Now we can back that nut all the way off. Next step here, grab your 10 millimeter socket and remove the brake line bracket from the top of the spindle. Just gonna disconnect that and move it out of the way. Now what I like to do is just thread the bolt back in just so you don't lose it. Makes it easy to find. In order to get our caliper bolts off, we're gonna remove this one down here and another one at the top. Now if they're giving you a little bit of trouble, a really big 1/2 inch ratchet would do the trick, maybe a breaker bar and an 18 millimeter socket. Now for this, you don't want to have this hang down on the brake line. It can be really detrimental to that line. So what we're going to do is find a nice spot on the frame to hang it up on. Next up, grab your T30 Torx bit and remove the rotor positioning screw from the front end of the rotor, and then pop the whole thing out of place. Grab your T30 Torx bit again and remove the wheel sensor screw, then unplug the entire sensor, swing the bracket line all the way on the other side, and then hang it up on the frame out of the way of the spindle. All right, now in order to get our axle nut off next, we're gonna need a 36 millimeter axle nut socket. Now I'm using air tools just to give myself a little bit more torque because this thing does spin. Now if you're having trouble with that, you could always throw a pry bar in between the studs to hold it steady. Having a helping hand goes a long way with that, but we're gonna use air tools here to give ourselves a little more torque. Here we go, we're gonna set this aside for reinstallation later. Next, we're going to do our upper and lower ball joints. Now the upper ball joint, you want to grab an 18 millimeter wrench just because there isn't enough room to get a socket in here and you need a deep socket. So that's not going to work. So we've got our 18 millimeter wrench. We're going to rotate this off. And again, just like we did with our tie rod end, we're going to rotate it until it's down to the last thread, and then use a hammer to dislodge it. Next up, we have a 15/16 wrench, and we're going to remove the bottom. With the top and bottom dislodged, I'm just going to unthread this bottom nut and the whole thing will come off. All right, next up here is going to be our front sway bar end link bolt. That's a 15 millimeter deep socket. You might need a wrench for the bottom here to keep it from spinning. Switching over to air tools to make our life a little easier. Next up here, we're gonna disconnect the top of our coilover. Now there's 3 bolts inside of your wheel well liner here. You're gonna need your 18mm wrench. I recommend a ratcheting wrench to make life a little bit easier. You wanna make sure you're holding on to these nuts because you'll reinstall those later. All right, grab your 15mm socket and your cordless impact or ratchet and remove the 2 bolts from the bottom of your coilover. All right, now pull the whole coilover assembly out of your front suspension. All right, next up are the 6 bolts holding on your axle shaft. Now you're gonna grab your extension, impact gun, and your 15mm socket and knock all 6 of those out. We're gonna remove the entire lower control arm here. You're gonna need a 15/16 deep socket on the inside nut here and an 18mm wrench on the outside of the bolt head. At this point, we're pretty much completely done disassembling the front end of our driver's side suspension. We want to repeat that whole process we just did for the opposite side on the passenger side front end.
So now that we have our factory struts removed, we can start to assemble our new shock. Now, first thing to note is we have a lock ring with multiple grooves. This is to set your ride height. Now, the lowest groove is going to be a stock ride height, while the highest is going to be the highest ride height setting. We're going to be installing ours at the highest ride height setting, so you're going to need a pair of lock ring pliers so that we can take this off of the first groove and install it onto the last one. Now, if you don't have a set of lock ring pliers, you can use snap ring pliers. Get that in there and spread that enough to where we can raise it up and into the next groove. And then we'll work it around and just do that one at a time until we get to our top groove. And then once we have that installed, we can take our collar ring. You want the wider side towards the bottom of the shock. Slide that over, and then this is what our lower spring perch is going to be sitting on. Now next we're going to go over to the spring compressor to compress our spring, remove our factory shock, and transfer over our spring, our top hat, bump stop, and our lower spring perch. Before we do that, I'm going to take a marker and mark down the center line of our front stud just so that we can line everything up a little bit better. So now we're over at the spring compressor. I've got our strut all set up. You want to make sure it's completely straight before you compress down on it. So now we can start turning our wheel up here to compress our spring, and then we can remove our top nut. Now we're going to compress until our shock is able to be turned. And then we can take our 18mm ratcheting wrench and a 6mm wrench to hold our stud, and we can remove our nut. So now since our center stud is a bit rusty, the wrench isn't holding it anymore, so I've got a pair of vice grips here. It's bottoming out against here, so it's a nice hold for us, and we can keep removing our nut. And now with our nut completely unthreaded, we can remove our shock. So now we can transfer over the bottom spring collar that we need for our new shock. So we're gonna take a hammer. First we have to tap off our top ring, and then we can tap off our collar. So now we'll just take our hammer and work our way around to tap this off. And then we can do that same thing with our spring perch. And then we can transfer this over onto our new shock. And then we'll take our bump stop cap, and then we can give that some taps on as well. So now we can take our new shock and we'll put it up through the bump stop. And then through the top. We'll get our new nut on top. And now you just want to make sure all of your alignment marks line up. Then we can go up top and tighten down our nut. Next we can grab our 15mm wrench and 6mm wrench to hold the stud and tighten down our nut. And now with our nut tightened down, we can relieve pressure on our spring. Then we can take this back to the truck and get it installed. So now we're ready to get our new strut installed onto the truck. Next, we can get our nuts reinstalled onto our studs. Next, we can reinstall our lower strut bolts. Now, Bilstein does give you nuts to use with the factory bolts. However, our hardware has been replaced, so we're going to be using our old hardware. And then we'll take a 17mm socket and wrench to tighten these down. Next, we can go back up top with an 18mm ratcheting wrench to tighten down our upper strut bolts. Next, we can reconnect our upper control arm ball joint to the knuckle and reinstall our nut. Next, we can take an 18mm ratcheting wrench to tighten that down. Now, our stud likes to spin, so I got a 7/32 Allen wrench, which I cut a little off the top, because as we bring this stud down, it likes to kind of bottom out on the axle and you won't be able to get your Allen key out. Next, we can grab our tie rod end and put that back in our knuckle and thread our nut back on. And then we'll take a 21mm socket to tighten that down. Next, we can reconnect our brake line and ABS line brackets. And we'll take a 10mm socket to tighten these down. Now lastly, we can reinstall our sway bar end link. Now at this point, you want to make sure you're caught up on the other side and install your end link on the other side, because once you tighten this down and pull your sway bar down, you won't be able to get it in on the other side. Now I've done that off camera, so I'm going to take a 15mm wrench and 15mm socket to tighten this down. And then you'll do that same thing on the other side. So that'll wrap up this review and install of the Bilstein B8 5100 series front shock for 0 to 1.85 inch lift for your 2014 to 18 Silverado and Sierra 1500. Thank you for watching, and for all things Silverado, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.